Part 114. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1146. When Yilin was familiar with the routine in the military factory, she found many researchers in white coats hurriedly coming and going. After Yilin waited for them to leave, she found Lu Ho near the Xiaoyang at 800 test machine. Lu Ho's medical diagnosis was multiple cervical vertebrae comminuted fractures, C3-C6 cervical spinal cord damage with corresponding high paraplegia, central respiratory failure, concussion, cerebellar hemorrhage, multiple contusions throughout the body with multiple fractures, and he was in critical condition. Now I rely entirely on a ventilator to maintain breathing, and large doses of dopamine, norepinephrine and other vasoactive drugs are continuously pumped to maintain life. He was immersed in a life support capsule filled with orange nutrient solution. Yilin opened the barrier and stopped pumping the sedative and analgesic drugs that were continuously pumped into Lu Ho. After a while, Lu Ho's expression in the life support cabin became ferocious and painful, and his tightly closed eyelids moved gurglingly. Yilin looked at the heart rate on the device. It was 120 beats/min, which was not bad. So he started to ask, "Let me make a long story short, Marquis Lu, I am GM. Lu Ho has been a member of the special group for 5 or 6 years, so he has naturally heard of the GM's name." Upon hearing this, his eyelids trembled violently, and his heart rate soared to 130 beats/min. "Yilin, you Meng betrayed, she took action against Mo Rendi, and your current situation, your life is hanging by a thread. You should know that Yu Meng and Lao Yu's family are secretly working on a mysterious scientific research project, right? Haha, you are the project now the test subject. Heart rate 145 beats/min. I can take you away without any conditions. If you agree, just raise your heart rate. Just be angry. You may not know me. I never force others to do things they don't want to do. Diddy diddy. The monitor alarms. Heart rate soared to 180 beats/minute. Okay, seeing that Marquis Lu agreed, Yilin happily carried the life-saving capsule, opened the portal, and disappeared. Shortly after Yilin left, a team of medical staff broke in. They looked at the empty laboratory. After staying there for a while, they called security in panic and informed their superiors. When Yu Meng and Zhao Yulong arrived, it was of course too late. Who is it? Yu Meng's face was dark and his lips were ashen. North of the capital. Within the 100,000 mountains. In the wild mountains, above the waterfall, there is a forest clearing. A few years ago, Yilin built several houses here. Under Ling Wen's care, it became a small manor with flowers planted in the yard. Ling Wen has been living in seclusion here. As an administrator, it is not normal to have a little property. In the garden, there is a shelf. There are several rows of masks hanging on the shelves. There are numbers ranging from 1 to 99 on the masks, and each mask has knife marks. When the wind blows, these neatly arranged masks jingle against each other like wind chimes, making a crisp sound. Over the years, Ling Wen has been seeking revenge. With the help of admin. The closer he gets to 100% progress, the more peaceful he feels. Apart from trials, he rarely had contact with the outside world and remained aloof from the world, becoming a quiet avenger. The progress is good. When Yilin carried Lu Ho's life-saving capsule and stepped out of the teleportation circle, Ling Wen was watering the flowers in the yard. Yilin took a quick glance and saw that Ling Wen's revenge progress was very close to 100%. From time to time, the administrator provided Ling Wen with the coordinates of the target. Ling Wen was like the god of death, coming to claim lives and was very efficient. Ling Wen bowed silently. In fact, he was able to heal his severed tongue a long time ago. However, he felt it was useless and unnecessary, so he remained mute. White mask, mute, elusive. The above 3 points are all his characteristics in the circle. This gave Ling Wen a not-so-famous name in the circle, the Silent Ghost. The advantage of being a lone wolf is that it is low-key. Yilin threw Luho in front of Ling Wen. Ling Wen was neither happy nor sad, and looked quietly at the god in front of him who had given him everything. He was waiting for further instructions. Soon you will be able to enter the next trial. Yilin smiled. I have been delayed for more than 10 days because of important things, referring to taking care of the baby. When I wake up, if he is willing to stay, I will go with him. He forms a team, and if he doesn't want to stay, let him go. Important matter? Team up. Next trial? Although Ling Wen had many doubts, he always just listened and didn't ask questions. He raised his knife and dropped it. So he nodded, indicating that he understood. In the circle of apostles, a panic called trial postponement spread quietly. In the apostles' forum, the apostles who were suddenly not used to the ants' postponement frantically posted in the forum. What should I do if I can't come to the trial? I delayed it for 10 days. It's time for the poster to take a pregnancy test. No kidding, many people have postponed it. Could it be that the tower is gone? If you say there is no tower, why don't you take a look at the whole telescope yourself, idiot? A brain is a good thing, but it's a pity you don't have one. Don't be so irritable upstairs. Maybe he is a pure strength person, with a pair of iron fists that can cut through everything. Doesn't it make sense to have no brains? Ah, yes, you don't want this brain. Yilin came to the sky. Zioxi, the puppet Xiao, are already waiting here. Xiao 11 hugged Xiao Wu, rarely serious. She looked deeply at the administrator. Are you mentally prepared? The administrator smiled slightly. This is history. Yes, it is history to you. Xiao 11 sighed, looking down at the world from a high place. At this moment, there was a trace of reluctance and nostalgia in her eyes. Many people will die. Progress will always be accompanied by sacrifice. The administrator took a deep breath and said, Link. Xiao 11 puffed up her chest and let the administrator do whatever she wanted. Yilin stretched out her hand, and her palms were covered with a layer of brilliant light. At the same time, high in the sky, ripples swayed out of thin air one by one. From behind the ripples, countless pipes stretched out, more than ever before, and were densely inserted into Yilin's back. Yilin inserted her hand into Xiao 11's chest and penetrated deep into her body. Applying to access source database. Application passed. Apply to expand Z1 offensive stance. Checking. Calibrating. Permission verification passed. Just agreement, passed. Calibration completed. Mistakes will lead to more mistakes. Rub. Yilin opened her eyes again. In front of him was a blue sea. This is Yuan Hai. Looking down, Yilin found that she had turned into a giant made entirely of light, floating in the middle of the source sea. Around the giant, there are groups of light spots of different colors, far or near, waiting for an opportunity. Countless light clusters are like stars, brilliant and beautiful. But Yilin knew that they were all enemies. It's the ship of the gods. And his vision at this moment is projected on the body of 11 Paradise, looking at the world of the gods in the source sea. Around 11 Paradise, there are countless small hands floating, attacking the final defense of 11 Paradise from the outside in the form of suicide impact. Although Xyle Garden's defensive light curtain looked correct under the attack of the Disorder Hunter, Yilin could clearly detect at this moment that with every wave of the Discord Hunter's attack, there was a trace of insignificant source, which was affected by them. Take away. Start Z1 attack mode. Linked with Xiao 11, temporarily taking over the throne of the god, with the appearance of the world, the administrator let out a silent roar. In an instant, in the source sea, a giant that had been dormant for half a century slowly stood up. The moment the giant started to stand up, Stars kept shining in the depths of the origin sea, and they obviously noticed Zyle Garden's movements. One day, I will return to you the suffering we have endured. Yilin looked at the stars indifferently, and activated the offensive posture of 11 Paradise with the highest authority. Countless pipes shot out from the giant's body, and each pipe was like artillery fire, blasting towards the stars deep in the origin sea. In the blink of an eye, the channels of light are formed. Under the offensive posture, Zyle Garden will forcibly connect with more worlds. In the past, the way Zyle Garden invaded other worlds was like sneaking in and sneaking around. But this time is different. It used to be stealing, now it's strong. Stealing can be good, it can be strong, and there is also the joy of being strong. This time, Ziwan seems to be speaking in a high-profile manner to the gods in the Sea of Origin. We are coming. Giant of light, rise. At the same time, worldwide, anyone who is judged by 11 Paradise to have a certain level of fighting qualifications will have a choice pop up in front of them at this moment. Do you believe in God? Yes/no? After doing all this, Yilin's consciousness fell downwards. He pulled his hand out of Xiao 11's body with a bang, and then looked at Xiao 11 unfolding the keyboard with a sad face, editing something. Announcement. To all you who are small, stupid, and ignorant. I am yours, God. Starting from today, this game will be upgraded to version 2.0. Specific rules changes will be included in the detailed rules. This enjoyable game will enter the 2.0 public beta era. The real suffering begins. Attachment, version update instructions. For details, please see chapter 486 version update, public beta. Over. Xiao 11 frowned. Her expression at the moment was completely opposite to the content of her announcement. Yilin stepped forward and looked at the contents of the announcement. She always felt that there was a slight discrepancy between this announcement and her memory, as if something was missing. Wait, let me add something. At this time, you men and other restless people were planning to seize qualifications. I guess they felt as if they had eaten shit when they saw this announcement. You guys shouldn't have taken action against Lao Mo. Yilin squeezed Xiao 11 away and added a sentence to the announcement. Oh, this new era is as you wish. Xiao 11 narrowed her eyes and stared at the administrator. Are you mocking? Huh? Is there a rule that administrators cannot ridicule, retaliate, or bully registrants? Well, there are no hard and fast rules. Then, this is ridicule, Yilin said firmly. I am still a bit short-tempered. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1147. Times have changed. It changed in an instant. Pippi's God issued Pippi's announcement. At that moment, the whole world had to make a choice about its future. But this choice is mandatory. On the surface it looks like yes/no. In fact, it is yes/no problem. Even the slashes are slashes composed of course cheating fonts smaller than ants. This means that whether you choose yes, no, or even use a clever slash, the end result will be the same. Under Zyle's offensive posture, all the people have no choice. All people will become warriors of 11 Paradise. They will invade all the worlds through the passage created by the offensive posture of 11 Paradise. They will bring more sources to 11 Paradise. Progress always comes with sacrifice. Soon. The first apostle survived. The world's population plummeted. The world's #1 guild, Apocalypse, was born. Xiao 11 announced this only achievement with a kiss in a Lolita tone. My family has to give me some food. There are more at the back. After the national public beta, Yilin became busy again. He worked almost day and night, processing background information. Editor of the Wishing Fountain. Opening of source database. Set rewards for props and skills. Yilin now finally understands why the Wishing Fountain is set up in such an obvious form. In the past, the apostles used the passage of 11 paradise to gather the wool of the gods. And now, the administrator has set up the lottery mechanism of the wishing well to collect all these wools back. The administrator transforms into a wool-picking master and never misses an opportunity. Offensive posture is the posture of Z1 that truly operates in a healthy manner. The registrants fight desperately in the other world, and everything they bring back will be converted into corresponding points. In the past, most of these points were stored in the registrant's account. Now, the administrator seems to be an emotional capitalist, trying to find a way to circulate these points and return them to the source database. Only administrators can make greater use of these precious sources. When Yilin returned to the northern manor again, Schwer surged again. "She is my daughter, Schwer. Come on, call me uncle." "Hello, Uncle." Schwer bowed obediently. He actually has a daughter? Ling Wen, who had always been indifferent to emotions and anger, had a look of astonishment on his face. In his eyes, GM is comparable to a god, but a god has a child. He thinks something is strange. Ling Wen finally believed it when Schwer shouted in front of him, "Daddy, that tree looks so cute," ran over and easily uprooted a tree with a bang. This is the child of God, there is no doubt. Yilin had been busy for a month. In the rare free time, Yilin played with Schwer in the garden for a while. After entering the door trial, Lu Ho just opened the door and came out. The moment Lu Ho saw Yilin, his muscles tightened for a moment and then relaxed. "It's you. Help me take care of the children." After Yilin ordered Ling Wen, he opened a subspace with a snap of his fingers and had a secret conversation with Marquis Lu. Half an hour later, the two came out of subspace. Schwer moved a boulder 2 people high from somewhere and was playing a game of breaking boulders with fists. "You, child." Lu Ho looked at the weak child and punched the boulder to make a big crater, and the corners of his mouth twitched. "If you didn't tell me, I would have thought you were an invincible child." "Yeah, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it cute?" "Beautiful means beautiful. As for cute..." Lu Ho hesitated and was thinking of other words. At this time, Schwer looked over and waved to Lu Ho, "Uncle, Daddy, come and play with Schwer." And Xiao 11 said, "There is a game called Chest Crusher." Marquis Lu quickly said, "It's so cute, I can't handle it." At the same time, Marquis Lu made a quick lunge and hid behind Yilin. Haha. Yilin's eyes signaled Ling Wen to stabilize Schwer first, while smiling at Lu Ho, "I hope you can unite people you trust." "Don't worry, Marquis Lu, will repay my kindness. Besides, they betrayed Lao Mo, and I can no longer be with them." "By the way, Mo Rendi is now?" Marquis Lu asked worriedly about Mo Rendi's situation. "What do you think?" Yilin asked, meaning something. "Yes, Mr. Lu is worrying too much." Ho Lu gave a wry smile. "This GM has been undercover in the special team as a special consultant for nearly 10 years. Everyone thought that the GM was just a senior apostle, but Mr. Lu I have witnessed the GM's methods in the subspace with my own eyes, and I know how terrifying this administrator is." After the explanation, Yilin was ready to take Schwer away. Marquis Lu watched him easily open a portal. He was surprised and couldn't help but ask, "Are you the god in the announcement?" Yilin shook her head. "How is that possible?" After a pause, Yilin added, "But, I help her work, and they all help me take care of the children." Lu Ho and Ling Wen opened their mouths at the same time. There was a click, and the mandibular joint was almost dislocated. After leaving the manor, Yilin returned to Qingcheng and found that Xiaoxi was not at home. Xiao was naturally taken away. Green isn't here either. Yilin was stunned and asked the navigator to locate the boss, who was soon found. Afterwards, Yilin crossed the grey fog area and came to the Tower of Death. In the meantime, Xiao 11 was holding the puppet Xiao Wu, floating in the air, and was poking towards the Tower of Death little by little. Every time Xiao 11 poked, a name was printed on the outer wall of the Tower of Death. As Yulin came closer, all the names became part of the texture of the Tower of Death. You can only see them clearly if you look closely. When Yulin understood what Xiao 11 was doing, he fell silent and stood quietly behind Xiao 11. Get up in the morning. Afternoon. Dusk. Late at night. It's early morning again. Xiao 11 was busy all night. She engraved all the dead people who had been called by the whole people on the tower, like their tombstones. Let's go. Xiao 11 waved her hand. Yulin accompanied Xiao 11 to the 4 districts and engraved the list of the dead in each district on the corresponding tower. For Yiren, he is difficult to empathize with. Because he himself belongs to the Tower of Death, registrants from other regions are more like outsiders to him. Even after becoming an administrator, this concept remains the same. Xiao 11 is different, she truly treats everyone in this world equally. She is a god. They are the people. That's all. Will anyone see it? Yulin asked, looking at the dense list of lists on the tower. Yes, Xiao 11 nodded affirmatively, the dawn that belongs to us will eventually come. Apocalypse Guild's number 1 secretly stimulated the nerves of many people. Everyone is reasonably speculating that this high-profile first achievement must be accompanied by special rewards. Of course, they guessed right, but so what if they guessed right? Can we still give awards? The administrator was well aware of the reaction from the outside world, so he secretly launched a new 10 draws from the wishing pool event on the ground, and adjusted the draw ratio appropriately. He looked at the source that was being credited in the background and felt happy. Of course, being a player is worse than being a planner. After closing, the administrator beckoned. Yulin chose the right moment to introduce Ling Wen to the F4 Council without the Li family, and left again. He was too busy to argue with Luther. Nowadays, under the administrator's structure, the world is divided into 3 distinct groups of people: enemies, those who can be used, and those who cannot be used. The administrator is now working hard to manage the usable part. Shortly after the establishment of the Apocalypse Guild, Marquis Lu also recruited a group of elite tough men to successfully establish the Peak Combat Power Guild. Immediately afterwards, Yulin quietly approached Yingxia, who was practicing swordplay with her granddaughter in the courtyard. When she noticed that the surrounding atmosphere had quietly become quiet, and even the air was a bit solemn, Yingxia frowned, asked her granddaughter to step back, sheathed her long sword, and asked the air calmly, "Who is coming?" "Old friend." Yulin fell into the hospital. "We have known each other for 10 years, and they are indeed old friends." In recent years, the special advisor has indeed lived up to his name. He is truly special and will never appear when nothing happens. When he appears, it will be accompanied by big events. He was secretly pondering the purpose of the GM's appearance, but the administrator had already grabbed a card from the void and threw it towards Yingxia. Yingxia was originally very calm, but when he saw the words on the card clearly, his whole body was shaking. Without him, GM gave too much. "What are you?" Yulin smiled lightly. "I think among smart people, there is no need to say too much. In the past 10 years, I have a certain understanding of you." "Huh, okay." Yingxia put away the props, his face calm, but the ancient sword behind his back was trembling slightly, all from his heart. He didn't ask what kind of deal it was or what the purpose was. When the administrator threw the reward to Yingxia without saying a word, Yingxia recognized this magnanimity. There is a saying that goes well: the most unpretentious ability is the ability to make money. Yulin sighed and left Ying's villa as if she didn't recognize her relatives. "Oh, by the way, he has no relatives." Change to Xiao Yang, conquer Luho, by Yingxia. "I'm not familiar with the Xiang family," Gu Tianqing sighed. Yulin spread out the imaginary chessboard and dyed the chess pieces of different colors green one by one with his hands. Green is a vibrant color and represents friendly forces. There is now a small patch of green on the chessboard, but work still needs to be done. Yulin looked at the green patch on the chessboard. The biggest green spot was Apocalypse Guild. Seeing this, Yulin couldn't help but smile knowingly. It may have been unintentional for them to register the name of Apocalypse back then, but when everything comes to pass, will they be very angry when they find that their name has been registered? Oh, no, except for Connor and Lao Hei, Miriam is one of her own, and Gu Tianking's identity is unknown. Only Connor and Lao Hei are outsiders from different artifact lines. If this continues, a world where only a certain knight of the apocalypse will be injured will inevitably come true. When Yulin approached Xiao 11 again, Xiao 11 was suppressing a smile and recording the achievement "We are the champions" again in a Lolita tone in advance. She read it 3 times in one breath and then said, "I'm just asking if you are angry. This achievement will be broadcast soon. There are less than 2 months left before the death of Xiao Yilin. The administrator and Xioxi know this very well, which means that time is running out. Schwetter has been mourning all day long about why Sister Green didn't come. Now she has given out the nightmare mark. In this way, she announced to the above people that she has raised the stakes. She can't come during this period of time. Is it really okay?" Yulin knew which no problem Xiao 11 was worried about meant. Green was temporarily offline, which meant that Yulin could no longer use Nightmare to hone the cognition she had worked so hard to create. "Instead of worrying about me, you might as well do something serious." Yulin picked up Schwetter and made Schwetter giggle by making faces. Yulin reminded, "Should you prepare to announce the mystery to No 2? Question." "Ah." Yulin imitated Xiao 11's usual gesture and raised an index finger mysteriously. The only way is to raise an index finger and say, "Blah blah, this is a huge riddle." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1148. Even though Yilin's supervisor eyes gradually recovered and she was afraid of being pulled out of her pigtails, Yilin did not go deep into the Tower of Famine and the Tower of Conquest. But with Yilin's layout here and the operation of the Tower of War server, the battle of the Apocalypse Knights gradually became clear, and Yilin saw a little chance of victory. Just a little bit. Nowadays, Yilin's situation is no longer limited to the mere registrants or the president of the Apocalypse Guild. He is looking at the overall situation, the entire gambling situation. Outside the world, the ships of the gods have surrounded 11 Paradise. In the Age of Gods, although they verbally promised to give Goddess 11 half a century to operate, they noticed that the Goddess 11 had numerous artifacts. After building powerful defenses and smoke bombs, the gods did not sit back and watch 11 UN become powerful, but silently opened their fangs and surrounded 11 UN. The enemies are most likely these gods. In fact, this terrible speculation is not the most despairing. The more desperate speculation should be that the 4 masters will die in person. Assuming that Lord is at this level, as Green said, it is immortal and is comparable to a concept, faith, and totem existence. Then, how should we usher in the dawn? Yulin didn't dare to ask Xiao 11 about this, and Xiao 11 didn't mention it, but they understood each other's worries. This is really a small tacit understanding between workers and bosses. He didn't even mention it on his lips, but he was thinking about it in his heart. The establishment of the Great Engineer Tower Station directly pushed the concept stock of Apocalypse to several daily limits. Everyone in the forum was shouting that Apocalypse Guild was awesome. Xiao Yilin and Li Kai, the president and vice president, are currently on the Great Engineer Tower, raising glasses to each other. For a new world. For a new world. Cheers. A few days later, Xiao Yilin entered the door. The destination is Gugu Town. There he is about to meet one of the most important mentors in his life, the Supreme Mage. After Xiao Yilin entered the door. On the snowy mountain, members of the guild formed teams in batches and explored around. Pan Zhenji was swinging his stick, knocking here and there, and accidentally triggered an avalanche and was trapped in the cave. In the wind and snow, the administrator arrived as scheduled. Call Uncle Pan. Pan Zhenji was bored playing with sticks in the cave. At this time, he saw Yilin coming in with Schwetter, and he shouted happily, "Yo! Boy!" Schwetter stared at old Pan with bright dark red eyes. "Hey! My eldest niece." "Papa," Schwetter grabbed her old father's sleeve, her eyes slightly glowing with dark red. She tilted her head and asked curiously, "Which one of them is Uncle Pan?" "Oh! You can actually see Lao Pan's brothers." Yilin smiled and rubbed Schwetter's white hair, and said dotingly, "She is indeed my daughter." "Of course. Schwetter is amazing." Schwetter raised her pointed chin proudly. "Uncle Pan is the one talking to you now." "Hello, Uncle Pan," Schwetter bowed in a sweet voice. Dad said, "Be polite to others." Hello niece, hello eldest niece." Pan Zhenji giggled, but he was so incoherent that he actually answered. Yilin started a fire with a snap of her fingers, put the hot snow rabbit on the shelf, and started roasting it. Schwetter squatted by the campfire, watching eagerly as the tumbling roasted snow rabbit dripped grease into the fire, her mouth watering. "Dad's rice is delicious," Schwetter thought to herself, looking forward to it and muttering in her stomach. "Old Pan, long time no see." While turning the makeshift barbecue fork, Yilin chatted as if reminiscing with an old friend, "By the way, the agent of death seems to have rejected the kindness of your family. What do you think?" Yilin's voice changed and her style of painting changed. The last sentence was addressed to the fourth personality Joker in Lao Pan's body. Old Pan also changed his style, grinning from the corner of his mouth to his ears. Just when he was about to change, Pan Zhenji's body suddenly twitched. He picked up the stick with his left hand and banged it on the side of his head. The weird laughter stopped suddenly. But the weird laughter stopped. When Pan Zhenji raised his head again, the right half of his face was a ferocious joker, and the left half was an innocent fool. The two halves of a face with completely different temperaments are divided into two parts from the midline of the bridge of the nose, clearly distinguishable. Ja. Hey hey hey. Two different laughters blended into one sound, echoing in the fire-lit cave. Schwetter just glanced at the scene that was more terrifying than a horror movie, but it was obvious that Lao Pan, possessed by a scary atmosphere, was not as attractive as the deliciously roasted snow rabbit. Yilin calmly sprinkled the cumin on it and handed it to Schwetter, letting her nibble on it by herself. "Be good, Daddy is chatting with your Uncle Pan and Uncle Joker, you eat first." "Yeah, I got it, Dad." Schwetter held up the barbecue obediently, opened her mouth to eat, and ate hard. Joker looked shocked and angry. "Impossible." Pan Zhenji, hey hey hey, a stick coming from the west, a flying fairy from the sky, yo yo yo. He hit himself on the side of the head as hard as he could. Yilin smiled and pointed at the right side of Lao Pan's face, which is the side of Joker's face. "You seem to have made a mistake." Ja. Oh. Yilin, you are the guests. Interesting. The right side of his face suddenly stopped smiling. "There's something more interesting. Do you want to play?" Yilin asked with a hint of temptation in her tone. Gg, it's too early. Now, you are not qualified." "Really? It's such a pity. I thought we had a chance to cooperate." As soon as Yilin finished speaking, Lao Pan slammed the stick on his head again, and the weird stick on the right half of his face was wiped out. "Schwetter, Dad is going on a business trip during this period. Can you let Uncle Pan play with you?" "Not good." Upon hearing this, Schwetter quickly gnawed the bones clean, leaving no residue at all. She pursed her lips hard, and tears began to roll in her eyes. "Do you want to meet your father when you were a child?" Yilin moved out of no to. "My father when I was a child." Schwetter was slightly startled, with a little tangle on her delicate face. She seemed to be hesitating whether it was better to be with the big daddy or the little daddy. Well, daddy's smell won't lie. Schwetter, just treat it as hide and seek. Whoa. Are there any dogs we can play with? Huh? Dog. Schwetter lowered her head and pondered what her father said. She was just wondering whether dogs can be played with, but soon, the attraction of playing with dogs took over, and Schwetter's eyes lit up. Is he a very fun and playful dog? It's very, very fun. You can also ride it, play with it, and play with it, Yilin said confidently. Then, okay, Schwetter rolled her dark red eyes and agreed reluctantly, Dad must come back soon, la go. Look. Hang yourself. 1,000 years. Don't change. After pulling the hook, Yilin stood up and left. By the way, dogs can't be eaten. Yilin instilled this concept into her good daughter with a serious expression. Okay, Schwetter lowered her head and reluctantly agreed. Shortly after the administrator left, Suziasu, Li Erpang, Wang Tiandi, and Ning Yu, under the guidance of Wang Tiandi's keen sense of smell, formed a search team and found the missing Panzhenji in the wind and snow. Of course, it is absolutely impossible for Lao Pan to disappear. Once he disappears, there is a reason for missing. They also discovered the strange girl following Lao Pan, who was strange. Uncle, who are they? Schwetter asked Lao Pan. Lao Pan pointed at Suziasu and the others and laughed, Lace. 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 Suziasu, Li Erpang, and Ning Yu clenched their fists at the same time. Panzhenji pointed at the dog squatting at Suziasu's feet, dog meat. Dog meat. Dog meat. The dog was also stunned. The sense of crisis made him tighten his tail subconsciously. Danger. She's following. Don't worry, no matter what kind of monster that child is, we have a station and she can't get in. Li Erpang carried Panzhenji on his shoulders, and the four of them and one dog returned to the station confidently. The lonely Schwetter stood in the snow, looking at nothing in front of her eyes, her eyebrows slightly twisted. After a moment, Schwetter relaxed her brows and stretched out her hand toward the camouflage canopy with a sweet voice, it smells like Daddy. Dad really didn't lie. But there was a hole in the camouflage canopy. See chapter 630 Daddy's smell for details. Unwilling. Xiao 11 appeared behind the administrator, poked the administrator's waist and laughed. It's a bit. The administrator didn't hide it and smiled helplessly, but I must know this history. It's really difficult, Xiao 11 and Xiao Wu said at the same time. Yeah, it's quite difficult, the administrator nodded. Loki didn't agree. Xiao 11 mentioned the brief conversation between Yilin and Joker. The puppet Xiao Wu raised his hand in Xiao 11's arms, compared with the one behind him, we are too weak. Xiao Wu, no one will think you are mute if you don't speak. Xiao 11 angrily stuffed Xiao Wu into her clothes to see if I didn't cover you to death. Yilin dug her fingers into her forehead and muttered, no, Joker can't make the decision for Loki. He must be hesitating, but dragging that person into the water, I still don't know whether it was right or wrong. Xiao 11 raised her index finger, what you said is wrong. It's not that we dragged it into the water, but that it wanted to enter. So, Yilin smiled, if you want to enter the venue, you have to follow our rules. When Lao Pan was lucky enough to break through the lock, I took advantage of Lao Pan not paying attention and quietly separated the visitor passage and Lao Pan. Pan's pivots are connected together. If they want to get in now, they can't get around old Pan. Once they get in, it's not up to them to decide whether they can get out. Xiao 11 squinted her eyes and chuckled, that's the VIP room we carefully prepared. Wakaka. He. One god and one puppet all let out weird laughter. At the same time, Gu Tianqing is acting secretly. He went through great hardships to find his distant ideal land. Gu Tianqing once again used this as a bargaining chip to negotiate with Yilin. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1149. Looking at the extremely gorgeous scabbard inlaid with gems, Yilin looked at Gu Tianqing, who had changed into another pair of vests, and was stunned. "What are you doing? This is the scabbard that has not yet been activated. You may not believe it, but in fact, this treasure has been hidden by the Western Holy See, hidden in the Vatican." Gu Tianqing reluctantly shook the scabbard in Yilin. "Akira, he seems to know the relationship between this thing and Yilin, with an expression of 'if you want it, just tell me.' How will I know you want it if you don't tell me? You stretched out your claws so long that you even managed to hide it from me." Gu Tianqing's secretly managed power actually extended to the Tower of War server. After a series of events, Yilin actually understood what Gu Tianqing wanted. And, what does he want to do? But one of the related points is that if Gu Tianqing breaks away from the identity of Death Knight and creates a vacancy, then an agent will be parachuted in, and the situation will only get worse. "Then just throw it away," Yilin said firmly. "I'm going to tell Zhan that you are holding the glory of their family in your hands." Gu Tianqing was stunned. He knew Yilin was shameless, but he didn't expect him to be so shameless. "You are really..." Gu Tianqing touched her nose and realized that shameless people can really do whatever they want. Both of them know the direction of history. If they don't follow the direction of history and let Xiao Yilin and Xiao Gugu die at the designated time and place, they will not reach hell, nor will they come here. Everything will start again. Gu Tianqing wanted to use this to threaten the administrator, but the administrator was barefoot and not afraid of wearing shoes, so he didn't accept the move. The two were silent for a moment. Yilin breathed out, "I know what you want." Gu Tianqing smiled, his eyes flashed, and he stroked his bangs, trying to use this action to hide his inner desire. Of course Yilin knew. What Gu Tianqing wants is backup. Named Gu Tianqing, the backup in 11 Paradise. Over the years, he has mastered the method of dividing his soul. What he wants is a body that can perfectly match his. He wanted to escape. Yilin originally wanted to fight with the Death Knight, but when he thought of Schwer, he softened his heart again, nodded and said two words, "Okay." Gu Tianqing was very happy. Then, this is a pleasant transaction. After reaching a preliminary agreement with Gu Tianqing, he went to work happily. As the saying goes, people under the roof have to bow their heads. Gu Tianqing lowered her head, having no choice. Who let the administrator be the authority dog now? Just as Yilin had speculated back then, under the arrangement of Gu Tianqing, the courier of distant Utopia was sent to the great engineer tower in Hading City, and was successfully killed by Xiao Yilin. Distant Utopia was also transferred to Xiao Yilin under the arrangement of fate. Little Miriam smelled the smell of glory and led 12 Knights of the Round Table to Hading City. At the same time, Yilin wrote a note in advance that said pick her up and ask Ling Wen to deliver it to Hading City at the appointed time. This is not bubble in the literal sense. The administrator just wants to use this impactful word to establish a teammate connection with Miriam in Xiao Yilin's heart. Really, there is no other meaning. After making full preparations for the next historical event, Yilin came to the Wandering Sea alone. Yilin's appearance quickly attracted Merlin. He was like a vampire suffering from persecution paranoia. He always felt something was wrong when someone came to Wandering Sea. Merlin felt relieved after confirming that the administrator was really here to do business and not to be a robber. He speculated on the meaning of Yilin's actions. After a moment, Merlin said seriously, "Are we going to start?" Yilin nodded. Together with Merlin, he came to the secret room deep in the Wandering Sea. The dirty coffin cloth was torn open, and after opening the sealed magic container, a brand new Sister Cecilia slowly opened her eyes in the container. "Teacher. Seshia 0, the work closest to the Holy Grail." However, the closer she got to the Holy Grail, her body became almost like a vessel. Without the magic ritual seal, her real lifespan would be less than 3 years. Sorry, after taking over Wandering Sea, Yulin met Zero several times. She can read the memories of the sisters. She is equivalent to the center of the sisters, so she won't seem strange when talking to them. Teacher, there is no need to apologize. Cecilia smiled slightly and stood up from the magic container. She knew her next fate, and her expression was not moved at all. I will not die, teacher. After entering the singularity, Cecilia, the center of the network, will be transferred to number 1. From now on, sisters, please leave it to the teacher and the dean. After saying that, Cecilia bowed deeply to Dean Yulin and former Dean Merlin respectively. Without any unnecessary farewells, she left the Wandering Sea and headed towards her destiny as the artificial Holy Grail. This is history. Merlin took the opportunity to use the channels he had been operating for many years to spread the news, specifically naming the clock tower. Magicians are creatures who instinctively long for truth, and Merlin was the same way many years ago. But when hesitancy successfully created the artificial Holy Grail, but found that this so-called artificial Holy Grail could not bear the name of truth, several old magicians died of anger on the spot, and Merlin also stopped pursuing truth. Freed from the curse, he understood something on the spot. The origin that magicians long for and pursue throughout their lives does not exist in this era. Merlin always thought so until he saw Yulin. He was keenly aware that the truth existed in this human being. No, in fact, at that time, Merlin had already vaguely realized that Yulin was no longer human. There was no human touch about him. The old vampire Merlin has a strong say in this matter, even though he has not sucked blood for many years. Clock Tower, which smelled the truth, took the initiative to enter the game under the leadership of Lord Bartholomew. The gears of fate began to turn. Everything Yulin had experienced happened as planned. He doesn't need to care about every detail of the whole thing. He only needs to release Cecilia and spread a few rumors, and the rest of history will be the same as what he knows. Under the influence of revision and distortion, Real and Only is running strictly according to the established script. Farewell, my disciple, Koto Mine Justice. Merlin came to the church and bid Koto Mine a fair farewell. This is also history. History is like a torrent, gathering 7 people who are worthy of heroic spirits there. The door is being opened through illegal means. Admins are circumventing just protocols. The agreement is passed. Damn. Zioxy discovered it when the administrator suddenly tampered with the background data. But soon, the corresponding historical memory was loaded from the artifact, she added dejectedly. Oh, I see. The administrator who was operating the background rolled his eyes. As a mere god, can you please not be surprised? Didn't you see the administrator working? Loading unconventional hyperlinks. Loading. Loading successful. Difficulty, Twilight of the Gods. Time, Age of Gods. Template, Heroic Soul Seed. Participating registrants, Joe D. Solomon, Miriam Artoria X Pendragon, Yulin, Koto Mine Justice, Gu Tianqing, Baal Sebastian, Michelle. After throwing 7 mortal people into the Twilight of the Gods difficulty trial, Yulin took a long breath. It's time. What follows is one of the most critical nodes in this long decade. After finishing, Administrator Yulin opened the portal and came to the underground cave at the bottom of the lake in UK Town. The sound of gurgling water echoed in the hollow. Dark chains extended deep into the ground. At the end of the chain is a complete skeleton. The skeleton was covered with a fine layer of powder. In the powder, there is a faint rust color, which is the weathered armor. The complete skeleton posture is fixed with hands raised in the air and legs deeply pressed down. No one would know that 5,000 years ago, this man once carried a falling city in the sky as a demigod. Gilgamesh's words lingered in the administrator's ears just like yesterday. Humanity will eventually win. Please witness with your own eyes the future of Uruk. Our will bring a true dawn to future generations. You said you would bring us victory. Uruk, stay here forever. After thinking for a moment, Yilin opened her eyes, and her figure gradually disappeared into the darkness. In the dark cave, a low whisper echoed, "Yes," I said, "I promise." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1150. The fighting in the Singularity Age of Gods is still vivid in Yilin's mind. Under the guidance of Merlin, Myrian came here. Myrian didn't know the purpose of her coming here, and Yilin didn't tell her either. Twilight of the Gods, no solution. When little Myrian sacrificed herself and took the initiative to die with the Holy Grail, the trial ended. Xiao Yilin appeared in the underground cavity of the lake in UK town. He saw the corrupted Gilgamesh and his Enkidu. Hiding in the dark, the administrator Yilin frowned. In Age of Gods, at the moment when little Myrian was judged to be dead, a card appeared at her place of death. That is Miriam's qualification. Boom. 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 At the moment of Miriam and Gutianking's death, their registration qualifications were stripped away. At the same time as it was being stripped away, the candidate knights who existed in the real world stepped out of the shadows one after another. In the four corners of the world, 4 beams of light of different colors tore open the ultimate defense of 11 paradise and descended into the world. The shadow of the balance that cannot be observed by humans, the light and shadow as bright as the sun and the moon, appears in the forbidden area. That's a just agreement. Yilin's vision passed through the cave, looked at the sky, and murmured to himself. The cards representing the registrant's qualifications were absorbed by the 4 light pillars, and the 4 agents stepped into the light pillars involuntarily at the same time. Hiss. Merlin, who brought Miriam here, took a breath of rotten air. The taste is like taking a bite of aged fermented bean curd. The vertical pupils on Myrian's forehead opened a slit. In an instant, Myrian seemed to have turned into another person, a strange and indifferent butcher. Inside the cave, the bloody light dyed everything red. Miriam's heart burned with a blazing fire. This fierce flame seemed to urge her to burn everything in sight. Under the butterfly visor, Myrian's eyes turned as red as blood. She recognized the man in front of her. Cook. She drew her sword. Why? Correct. He took the glory of the Pendragon family. I hate him. Cut it. Cut it. Die, 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 die. Myrian drew her sword. The dark auroras condensed silently. The war knight fell with his sword, and the dark aurora penetrated Xiao Yilin's chest. Those eyes. The administrator not only knew the history, but also had long expected that it would not be easy to trick the Knights of the Apocalypse into becoming teammates, so he was well prepared. With his right hand, he moved quickly and drew circles. Before himself was chopped to death by Miriam's sword, he opened the portal and threw the dying himself back to the station. When Merlin saw this, a large amount of cold sweat dropped from his forehead. He shuddered and took dozens of steps back. Blood-red armor covered Myrian's body, and the thick bloody aura was like substance, turning into countless tentacles, beating everything around Myrian crazily. The eyes on Myrian's forehead were only slightly opened at first, but as the red light on Myrian's body became more intense, the strange eyeballs opened wider and wider. Dean, what should we do? Merlin quickly flew to the Dean's side. The administrator rolled his eyes. Now you know to call me Dean. Merlin fiddled with his hair gracefully and pushed behind Yilin quickly. No, Brother May has always admired me. He used to call himself Old Merlin, but now when something happens, he willingly takes on the role of younger brother. No, I can't bear your admiration. What happened to her? Probably, get up and get angry, I guess. What the hum? Really? Myrian, who put on the war knight armor, raised her sword high again. The bed is heavy, of course I'm just joking. A more reasonable speculation is that in order to truly become agents, they will become containers and carry part of the authority of the masters. In the past, Gu Tianqing always talked about the word death. As for the impact of war, it is clear at a glance, it is quite warlike. Be careful. The second wave of bed rage is coming. Yilin stopped bickering with Merlin and activated the freedom technique. In an instant, a huge halo with dense circuits spread out layer by layer, reaching 7 levels at a time. High-speed divine words. The lost magic of the gods. The old antique Merlin is indeed the only remaining old master in the magic world. He can see at a glance the depth of Yilin's 7-layer defensive magic in an instant. One is fast speed, and the other is high intensity. To put it simply, it is fast and hard. Boom. The dark light came from bottom to top, like tearing a piece of paper, splitting open the cave under the lake, and the dark light surged into the sky. 1,000-meter-long black sword light rose straight up and then fell heavily, dividing the UK basin into two. Whales, blood, and wreckage became the only main theme of this town. This sword was more severe than the one that penetrated Xiao Yilin's chest. Yilin's best and quickest defensive move, free method 7 circles, was chopped into pieces by the sword, 2 layers, leaving only a mere its 5 floors. The power of this sword is so terrifying. A minute ago. The Tower of War and Tower of Death servers are at the junction. A small village. The inspector opened his eyes. She disappeared from the station, and when she reappeared, she chopped off Xiao Gu Tianqing with a knife. Ah, finally. Gu Tianqing came here humming a song and stepping a little. This is the place of destined death. I'm finally dead. Gu Tianqing was very happy. Sheng Chunro followed closely behind Gu Tianqing. She looked at Gu Tianqing with eyes full of admiration. Gu Tianqing smiled. Everyone will face death, and only death can make life complete. I really want to die too. There is a chance, so my life becomes complete because of it, doesn't it? Gu Tianqing smiled, but deep in his smile, there was a hint of helplessness that Sheng Chunro couldn't understand, stepping into the dark beam of light. The light beam disappears. Gu Tianqing was wearing pure black armor, and there was a gray aura surrounding her. Gu Tianqing's unfamiliar laughter came from the visor. It's starting. If Yilin were here at this moment, she would find that the man in the armor is Gu Tianqing, but he doesn't look like Gu Tianqing. Because Gu Tianqing never smiles so arrogantly. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. There seems to be something wrong with the process. It started, but it didn't quite start. Who is missing? Gu Tianqing looked up at the sky and slowly typed a question mark. But after a moment, Gu Tianqing burst into laughter. Apocalypse Guild, Apocalypse, ha ha ha. So that's it, you are worthy of being yours. My guild president. Broken UK basin. Dots of broken black light fell like rain over the basin. After the dark sword light shattered the 2 layers of defense of free law 7 circles, the eyes on Myrian's forehead closed again. The red and black armor on her body also dissipated with the disappearance of the light beam. Miriam, who had regained her composure, suddenly remembered what she had just done. She squatted on the ground in pain, holding her arms, feeling lonely and helpless, trembling all over. Yilin frowned and looked at Myrian's forehead without saying a word. Merlin poked Yilin. Dean, us. You follow her. Yilin didn't explain. He moved his right hand in slow motion, opened a circle, and left the place. Merlin originally wanted to follow, but he didn't and stayed where he was without tears. Yilin sits on the top of Mount Everest. There used to be a cave here, but it was dug out and became part of the Apocalypse Guild's residence. There is only a small, bare flat land left here. Yilin just sat there, motionless and silent. It seems like he is meditating, but also like waiting. The space around him was slightly distorted from time to time. A month later, Xioxi came. Like a snowman with a thick layer of ice on her body, Yilin opened her eyes. Did you take advantage of the agreement? Yilin asked. Xiao 11 looked at Yilin, who was covered in thick snow, and first replied, yes, the agreement signed at the beginning was, after half a century, the four masters will select the knights they like. After all the knights return to their positions, the official load will be revelation. Xiao 11 raised her chin proudly, I have never signed an agreement like only 4 knights of the apocalypse. Yilin nodded, and secretly said that it was true, mistakes will lead to more mistakes. My wish to name the guild Apocalypse, and your disguise of 11 Paradise as Apocalypse Knight module, became a twisted a part of the Knights of the Apocalypse, which was originally supposed to be only 4, became 5. And I am the 5th, can I say that this is an unsurprising result? Are you ready? Xiao 11 asked worriedly. You mean? I'm worried whether your human nature will interfere with your making irrational choices. Yilin smiled slightly. He pressed his chest hard, but his expression was calmer than usual. It doesn't matter, I separated the divine and the human. If you do this, as your authority improves, it is very likely that a second you will be split. No, Yilin shook his head, I accept all of this. The human me is me, and the divine me is me. We are all me. Then I'm relieved. Xiao 11 raised an index finger and said solemnly, the chance is only for a moment, only 0.618 seconds. When the supervisor arrives in that world, kill those who are mistakenly judged as intruders. When your qualification will be transferred to you again in 0.618 seconds after being transferred to 11 Paradise. At that time, you who have regained the qualification will become urine again. When the qualifications are transferred, this subtle delay of only 0.618 seconds is our only chance. Don't forget, you and her are one. We live together and die together. If you have the slightest hesitation, even if you succeed in killing the supervisor, you will still be entangled between the two of you. Take away the reason of the world. Yilin listened quietly. If we can't, Xiao 11 closed her eyes, we will overtake the game and everything will stop. Yilin closed her eyes and did not respond. The mind is calm, like water. December 31st. Xiao Yilin was fully prepared. He vaguely understood something. Various hints have allowed him to find the answer to the only way, the apparent answer. Now Yilin still doesn't know that this riddle actually has multiple answers. He underestimated Riddle 11's advanced skills. Before Xiao Yilin stepped through the door, the administrator secretly visited Morendi. Carrying a pot of warm wine, Morendi walked out of the camouflage sky and came to the snow. Long time no see, old friend. Yilin sat down and chatted with Morendi. Neither Morendi nor Yilin mentioned anything about the future during the conversation. But at the end, Morendi drank the last glass and suddenly asked, is it time? Yilin nodded, it's time. I will leave for a while. Have a nice trip, old friend. Morendi looked sad and raised his glass to say goodbye. Good. For Yilin. This is the most painful moment. If the divinity had not awakened, could he make such a decision? Yilin didn't know and couldn't answer. Close your eyes. The conversation between him and Shui rang in Yilin's ears. Dad, what kind of person is Shui's mother? Her name is Xiaorugjiu, too. This is your mother's name. Sounds good. Of course, your mother is an unruly little princess, an emperor with a motherly demeanor, a gifted swordsman, a high-ranking leader, and a female CEO respected by thousands of people. Can Shui see her mother? Don't make trouble, you saw it when you were a kid. Shui forgot. When Shui grows up, she will meet her mother. Then Shui will grow up quickly until she meets her mother. Dad is not allowed to lie. Look. Look. Hang yourself. 1,000 years. No changes allowed. The moment he opened his eyes, Yilin's eyes were cold and without light. He will personally open the door to that world. The only door. He will press the button with his own hands to send himself there, meet Xiaorugjiu, fall in love with Xiaorugjiu, and then watch Xiaorugjiu's death with his own eyes. If he had not pressed this button, none of this would have happened, he would not have reached reality, and he would not have been able to escape the world of artifacts. Everyone has something they cannot escape. Only by facing it and facing your own fears can you take the first step. I can save everyone, except you. Yilin lowered his head and pressed the button. The door opens. Xiao Yilin stepped through the door and embarked on a journey, to death. After sending Xiao Yilin away, Yilin completely erased her sense of existence. Wiped from everyone's memory. Deeply hidden in the cracks of history. Staying, hiding, waiting, suffering. Until 1 year later. Inside the Apocalypse Guild's residence. Ling Yi opened her eyes, and her eyes were as clear as a mirror and as clear as water. In front of her, the stream of light rolled out from the void and condensed into a door that was overflowing with light. An illegal intruder was detected and forced into 11 Paradise through illegal means. The anti-intrusion program will be launched soon. According to the convention. Article 17864. Rule 573. Intruder detected. According to the details, the erasure procedure will be carried out. Ling Yi made a sound that was not human. Cold and ruthless, as hard as iron. At this moment, she is more like a program that rigidly enforces rules than a person. Her posture is like an independent fairy falling into the world. She floated gently, covered with flakes of snow, and stepped through the door. Inspector, what is about to be carried out is justice. On the snowy mountain. The moment Ling Yi stepped through the door, an ice sculpture cracked in response. Yilin was inside the ice sculpture and suddenly opened her eyes. Turning his eyes again, Yilin stepped out of the circle of light and came to the northern mountain manor. Ling Wen seemed to know something in advance and was waiting in the manor yard early. Alone. There were 89 masks neatly arranged on the shelf. The rest either died violently or died in trials and were never found again. Ling Wen has completed his revenge. He got the peace he wanted. His wife and daughter can rest in peace, and he has fulfilled his wish. The man whom Ling Wen regarded as a god appeared in front of him. Yilin looked into Ling Wen's eyes. You might die. Ling Wen slowly put on the mask and nodded. That's enough. Ling Wen smiled, and after many years, he spoke again. Thank you. The third-level database is opened. Thick tubes are connected to Yilin. He stretched out his hand, but his right hand was empty, but after linking to the source database, the sources in the database turned into illusory data streams and gathered in Yilin's hand. A knife that looks like a stream of light gradually takes shape. Yilin closed her eyes and thrust the data stream knife into Ling Wen's chest. At the same time, Ling Yi kills the intruder and completes the mission. As if she had accomplished a trivial task, she looked calm and beautiful as a fairy, stepped out of the door, and appeared in the snow-capped mountains again. The world around him suddenly stopped. The falling snow freezes in mid-air. Laughter, footsteps, wind, everything stopped. Suddenly, Ling Yi lowered her head and looked at her chest. She wore an amulet around her neck. It was that person who was closely related to her, an amulet given by someone. She carried this amulet with her all these years. On this amulet is the protection of the world. At this moment, a data flow knife stretched out from the amulet strangely and penetrated her. Ling Yi. Rub. The wound expanded in an instant, and with a twist of the sword's light, it split open Ling Yi's chest and cut off Ling Yi's beautiful head. All this, too fast. From the moment Ling Yi stepped out of the door, to the appearance of the knife, to the time she was beheaded, the whole process took place in less than half a second, in the blink of an eye, in an instant. You are cheating. The severed head made a sound without any fluctuation, one word at a time. Ling Yi's body quickly turned into light and dissipated after the head and neck were separated. From the wound, a pair of hands tore open the wound, and Yilin squeezed out of the wound bit by bit. A white beam of light fell from the sky and landed in front of Yilin. At the end of the light beam, a white card was spinning rapidly. That's his qualification. Everything about him. All of him. Stepping into the light pillar, he will become Yurin again. The administrator turned a blind eye to the light beam, but looked at Ling Yi's head indifferently. Her head was turning into a ruthless data flow, collapsing and disappearing. In my nightmare, I killed you 3.6 billion times with my own hands. I watched you kill Xiaorugjiu with my own eyes 9,736,524,918 times. Do you know? I've always wondered what it would feel like to actually kill you. Now I know. In the past 10 years, I have always had something that touches my heart and I want to say it to you. Now. That's it? The blade in Yilin's hand, which was constructed from a huge source and could cut off logic, turned into a blue light point and disappeared. Yilin said softly in a tone that was so calm that it made one's hair stand on end, Ling, supervisor, goodbye. I'm back from hell. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1151. Chapter 1151. I finally finished writing this volume, and I was exhausted both mentally and physically. Whether it's filling in holes or watching readers' reactions, I read and write silently. Strictly speaking, this volume is more like a link between the past and the next, summarizing and looking forward to the dawn in the dark night. This book sets a weird tone from the beginning. 10, the name says it all. The process of writing, pushing it bit by bit, acting bit by bit, setting the time points, and interlacing the light and dark lines were all very difficult. A long time ago, I secretly set a hidden line. This hidden line is from the GM perspective. The previous story, if you look at the bright and dark lines together, is the complete story line. This kind of thankless writing method may not be used in any novel for the rest of my life. Tired and unpleasant. Many readers said that this volume was a bit underwhelming, laughs. The cutest part should be Xiaorugjiu. Well. Cry silently. In fact, when I stabbed you, I also stabbed myself 100 times. I personally feel that this part of the plot is not about knife for knife's sake. But the plot requires it. Why did 10 become GM? I think it requires a heavy emotion to carry it. Xiao 11 said, the only difference in this reincarnation is that 10 fell in love with someone and lived 3 lives like a normal human being. Only in this way can we learn from the pain and kill 011. In short, this volume is over, good or not, I don't care. Of course, the follow-up results have already said everything, laugh again, but what does it mean? Next volume preview. There is still no way to write an outline. I will substitute my own emotions into 10's emotions to deduce this volume as much as possible. If nothing else happens, this volume should build on the momentum of the previous volume and go all the way to the end. If nothing else, this should be the last volume. As for how long this volume will be, it's hard to say. Without an outline, Bai Yi cannot guarantee the direction of the subsequent plot. Bow to the sky, bow to the earth, and pray for the possession of Wenkustar with a pious heart. Infinity Throne. Author, Bai Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1152. You're cheating. Zizi. Ling Yi's head made a ruthless sound like a machine. Bitingly cold. Yeah. Yilin raised her head, no longer paying attention to Ling Yi's head, but strode towards the white light beam. You are. Boom. Yi Lin's right foot was covered with a layer of dark light, which was the power of annihilation. With one step, Ling Yi's head completely disappeared from this world. When the supervisor is ejected from the venue, Yi Lin turned around. The closed loop is broken. In one thought, one move, one step away, a world that had not yet had time to be born collapsed silently. The logic of the world has been retwisted back to normal. This most critical 0.618 seconds is the only chance to cut off the closed loop. Once he is unable to kill Ling Yi, the True One will be reset to the moment 10 years ago when Xiao Yilin arrived at the True One from hell. If he continues to be unable to kill Ling Yi, then this closed loop will continue indefinitely, until the source is exhausted within the database. Yi Lin personally sent herself into that world. Create the cause of his existence, and then kill the supervisor to end the effect. At this point, Yi Lin personally cut off this closed loop. Killing Ling Yi with your own hands, killing your childhood sweetheart, killing the being who was born with you, this feeling is indescribable. Even Yi Lin didn't have the pleasure of revenge, it was empty and sluggish, as if a dirty trace had been wiped away. In the nightmare, Yi Lin killed Ling Yi 3.6 billion times. These 3.6 billion kills had left Yi Lin with no feeling at all, and an empty heart without wind or wind. Wave. Strong vibrations, centered on Yi Lin, spread throughout the station. In the Apocalypse Guild's residence, the permanent staff reacted very quickly, and their first reaction was, something happened. When Li Xiaoqi, Oda Mai and others came over with knives in hand, they only saw a man wearing a traditional robe, with long hair shawl, and a lonely and calm back. Smoke and dust were rising all around, and Mai Oda put her hand on the knife at her waist. The white beam of light broke through the camouflage sky of the station and fell in front of Yi Lin. Molly, Amorendi, Li Erpang, and Suzayasu came one by one. They looked at that back figure, which was both strange and familiar. A sharp pain, like burning fire, fell on his chest out of thin air. The mark of the skull is fading away, and the nightmare mark on the left eye of the skull is grinning ferociously, swallowing death. Yi Lin's forehead felt itchy at the same time. Came back. Everything that once belonged to him is back. He circulated in the artifact, went through hell, walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood, and now, he is back. From this second onwards, it is truly the future. Notify Li Kai that both stations are on alert. Yi Lin turned around, the aloofness and indifference in her eyes gradually disappeared, replaced by the familiar wisdom and calmness, which revived again. Grass? Are you back? Li Erpang was dumbfounded when he saw the long-haired man in ancient costume turning his head. Yi Lin entered the trial, but it took a full year. Well, I'm back. After Yi Lin finished speaking, she turned around and stepped into the beam of light. The white beam of light drowned the lonely figure. At the same time, when the supervisor died, Yi Lin's qualification was transferred back to the administrator. The world is undergoing tremendous changes. The distortion that pervades this world is gone. The influence of the correction is receding like a tide at a terrifying speed. The world under the influence of distortion and correction has returned to the right track from the moment the supervisor died. In the Apocalypse Guild Snow Mountain Station, the person with the strongest sense of this should be Molly. She covered her head in pain, and she clearly felt that her cognition was being strongly impacted. In her memory, the hidden part reawakened. In her memory, the strange Uncle G who accompanied her through her childhood suddenly overlapped with Yi Lin. It's not just Molly who feels the same way. A similar sense of dissonance appeared around the administrator and the 4 alternate knights at the same time. In Ying's villa, Ying Xia, who was practicing his sword, focused his eyes, and the long sword that was supposed to be thrust out suddenly stopped. It turned out to be him. At the same time, "You family. Surrounded by the tough men, Ulixin enjoyed a moment of peace and closed his eyes to sleep. That man has disappeared for a whole year. Even so, the habit of letting people stay awake has become an instinct in Yuli's heart, and it will be difficult to change it for a while. At this moment, Ulixin, who was half asleep and half awake, suddenly jumped up from the bed. The blazing flames burned the bedboards into charcoal. Shoo, slop, slop. Ulixin roared angrily. The strong man in the room cautiously retreated to the edge of the room, as if facing a formidable enemy, with cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. Hating city. Great engineer tower. Bang. The teacup fell to the ground. The hot black tea in the cup dyed the blanket into the shape of a map. Li Kai covered his head in shock and said nothing. Mrs. Li stepped forward and was about to help her husband rub her temples, but as soon as she took a few steps, she also froze in place with a look of surprise on her face. After a while, Li Kai and his wife looked at each other and said in unison, "How is that possible?" Zhao Yulong, who drank to drown his sorrows, smoked a cigarette in the dark. Snap! In shock, the cigarette held between Zhao Yulong's fingers fell to the ground. All those who had come into contact with Yulin and Administrator in the past 10 years were also shocked and speechless by the refreshed worldview. The blurry face in the memory gradually became clear. The Administrator, Yulin, is actually the same person. Finally. Next to the light beam at the snow-capped mountain station, a little bat stretched its waist, yawned, flew out of the ripples and landed on Yulin's shoulder. The boring part is finally over. At the same time, in the center of the sky, a small black dot suddenly appeared. The small black dots are like thick ink. At the moment when they are blurred, the sky that was originally daytime, a pitch black sky, spreads out silently, dyeing the world black. In just a few seconds, day turns to night. Survivors all over the world looked at the sky in shock. They didn't know why the world suddenly experienced such changes. Rub. 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 At the end of the 4 light pillars, 4 seats of different colors descended quietly amidst the panic of the night. Conquer. War. Famine. Die. Each of the 4 thrones occupied a part of the sky, and each of them dropped a beam of light that penetrated the sky and the earth. Blood red, dark green, bright silver, gray and black. Tower of Conquest server, Connor D. Solomon. Tower of War server, Miriam Artoria X Pendragon. Tower of Death server, Gu Tianqing. Tower of Famine server, Nameless Lao He. Caught in the cracks of history, under the influence of distortions and corrections, the 4 knights who were delayed for 11 years before appearing on the scene returned to their peak form at the moment when their qualifications were reloaded. The 4 knights rose into the sky in the pillar of light, rising high into the sky. As they ascended, streams of light of different colors covered their bodies and turned into their armor. Yulin is also within the light pillar. Apostle panel. Storage space. Parasitic equipment. Enchanted weapons. Everything returns with the transfer of qualifications. He re-registered. But at the same time, he is also the 5th. 5th place, Night of the Apocalypse. The show is too weak. Green shook his head and looked at the 4 seats in the sky. He lowered his head and chuckled to Yulin, "You will lose just by trying to show up." Yulin smiled faintly, expressing her dissatisfaction, flashing her wrists, ready to show off and compete with him. Etc. Green held Yulin down and asked solemnly, "Are you willing to become my knight?" Yulin was stunned, and after thinking for a moment, she shook her head. "I always thought that our relationship was more like a debt relationship." Not only did Yulin's answer not make Green angry, the little bat was smiling so happily on Yulin's shoulder that his fur was trembling. "That's a good answer." The blazing white light beam was instantly dyed dark red, and the faces were like magnificent undercurrents, moving in the light beam. At the end of the light beam, Green's nightmare authority appeared in the night sky of this world like a towering mountain. The stream of nightmare light condensed on Yilin's body. In the blink of an eye, the dark red cloak automatically moved without wind, and Yilin also had a set of crystal armor on her body. One after another, twisted and terrifying faces flowed on the surface of the armor. Go. My knight. In the sky. The fifth throne appears. That is the authority called Nightmare. For a long time, Green has always taken advantage of the Nightmare to sneak back and forth between 11 Paradise. Even if other masters discovered it, they would just turn a blind eye and pretend they didn't see it. But when Green's authority officially invades 11 Paradise in such a high-profile manner, it means one thing. Lord of Nightmares, enter the game. Nowadays, the battle for 11 Paradise has changed from 4 masters to 5 masters. Hey hey hey. Cough cough cough. At this time, high in the sky, a strange smiling face appeared. Yilin had seen this face before in hell. Yeah, don't get me wrong, the weird smiling face that rivaled the sun and the moon grinned even wider. I think you need a new supervisor. Loki. Yilin felt inexplicably angry when she saw this face. You want to fish in troubled waters? What a beautiful idea. Beat it. Green's voice sounded within the armor. Myrian raised her sword. Connor raised his sword. Lao He raised his hand. Gu Tianqing raised the sickle. Yiren pulled out his gun. 5 knights took action at the same time. The dark light, the sword wind filling the sky, the grey fog, the green liquid, and the bright artillery fire. Under the instructions of the leader, the 5 knights simultaneously issued a terrible blow, blasting towards the stinky face in the sky. It's really scary. The weird smiling face was smashed to pieces by the combined efforts of the 5 knights. Everyone in the world raised their heads, their necks felt swollen and painful, but they didn't even notice. Their eyes widened and their mouths opened wide. Billions of people stared at the sky dumbfounded. This scene caused the worldview of all the apostles to collapse. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1153. The final gambling game officially begins. In front of everyone, including Yilin and the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse, as well as the whole world, lines of subtitles, cold and ruthless, appeared one by one. Pattern matching. Matching completed. Revelation, modified. Exception error detected. Correcting. Correction failed. Correction failed. Correction failed. Rank, Supervisor, none. Continue to correct, bypassing the fair agreement and continue loading. Error ignored. Mode loading. Difficulty, Twilight of the Gods. Participants, all registrants of 11 Paradise. Restrictions, none. Time, none. Loading scene, night, flood, fog. Loading camp, natural disaster, order. Loading sequence, Beta DXXX agent, night. Loading troop types, random. Loading stores, munitions, honor, foundry, conflicts have been ignored. Boundless night sweeps over the world. On the seaside, a raging tsunami flooded the city on the seaside and destroyed all the buildings. Hating City bore the brunt. Dark doors appeared out of thin air in every corner of the world. Monsters with different styles stepped out from behind the door. In just 1 minute, the originally peaceful world fell into terrible chaos again. And at the same time, high in the sky, the 5 knights were wearing armor, separated by mountains and seas, and against the background of their respective master powers, their small figures exuded endless coercion. You actually survived. Conquering Knight Connor looked at the direction of Mount Everest from a distance. In an instant, he remembered everything that happened in hell. He suddenly understood something and laughed. So it's you. Across the sea, Connor waved his giant sword. Layers upon layers of space waves pass over the Pacific Ocean. Wherever they pass, the ripples in space follow the direction of the tsunami and spread into the distance. Along the way, the ground shook, cities cracked, and high-rise buildings collapsed. Say hello. The strength of the complete apocalypse night cannot be measured by attributes. Although Connor's sword was not very powerful, it was powerful enough to be regarded as a qualified greeting. Everyone, prepare for impact. Yilin's voice sounded over the Snow Mountain Station. The members of the Snow Mountain Station heard Yilin's order before they had time to recover from this series of changes. When Wang Tiandi heard this, his forelegs swung out after images, and in a blink of an eye, he dug a big hole on the ground and got into it. When Shu'er saw it, she happily hid with Emperor Wang Tian. Li Erpang hugged Suzayasu. Suzayasu understood instantly. Her body size soared to 1.99 meters, her Lolita skirt instantly tightened, and she activated mountain-like, rooted to the ground like an unfailing god of war. The man hugged Li Erpang, and the girl hugged Suzayasu. Hand to hand, heart to heart, under Yilin's instructions, everyone in Tiankai Guild quickly fixed themselves in this way, as if they had gone through countless fire drills. Oda Mai looked at the sky. Only a small long-haired Yilin was left. Her eyes flashed. Without any nonsense, she stabbed the ground with her two swords and plunged into the ground. Boom boom boom. The entire station tilted 15 degrees in an instant. In the distance, the mountain cracked, and the dusty snow turned into an avalanche, swishing down. During the president's absence, the members had already bid farewell to the days of frequent avalanches. However, when the president returned, the avalanches came as promised, making Li Erpang and others say F***ck, while also reminiscing about those years. Passionate burning years that explode at every turn and avalanche from time to time. Very good. High in the air, Yilin was very confident about the tenacity of her station. Even though waves of avalanches hit the defensive canopy of the station, he ignored them. When the greeting from the conquering knight came, Yilin, who was wearing nightmare armor, smiled faintly. He put on the Supreme Mage's small gift apprentice's hanging ring from the storage space for a long time. It's my turn. As Yilin's right hand with the hanging ring rotated rapidly in front of her, portals bursting with orange fire appeared one after another. Yilin opened nearly 100 portals in one breath. American continent. 12 palaces, distributed in a clock pattern. The Inca Holy Empire was a country that respected theocracy. Not long ago, their old god king fell and a new god king was born. Connor became the new god. The believers' eyes were pious and fanatical, and they were chanting towards the silver throne in the sky. This is a miracle. Only God can create miracles. At this moment, teleportation circles opened out of thin air. In each teleportation circle, another knight appeared. Hello, Knight of Conquest. Yilin rolled out hundreds of small annihilation balls in one breath and threw them in. After throwing them, he immediately closed hundreds of portals. When Yilin and Connor were greeting each other, the war knights in the sky above Europe took a few steps, like red and black lightning, to the sky above the African continent. Under the green throne, with the famine knight as the center, circles of decayed halos spread out. War Knight Myrian, the red light on her body is melting away at a speed visible to the naked eye, dripping blood. Myrian raised her sword high, and extremely black light condensed on the sword. At this moment, she was like a dark star in the night sky. A sword fell. The knights of the apocalypse greet each other. Gu Tianqing, who had just become a death knight, spread his hands helplessly while digesting the huge information. He always felt ignored. At this time, the throne behind the 5 knights gradually faded. A skull-shaped star shines above the Death Knight. Twinkle and twinkle. Right below the skull star is the Death Knight Gu Tianqing. Between the skull star and the Death Knight, there is a straight line of light, thin and imperceptible. But if you look carefully, you can still barely identify it. Real-time location. Gu Tianqing looked at the skull star above her head, thoughtfully. Landslides, ground cracks, tsunamis, monsters. This world, with the birth of the apocalypse night, has truly fallen into a complete disaster. Natural disaster is coming. After Connor waved the sword in greeting, the station he had secretly run for 10 years beneath him was drowned by the explosion of fire in the blink of an eye. Good for you. Connor didn't mind this either. After being slightly stunned, he laughed loudly. The 5 thrones completely faded from the night sky. Instead, there are 5 strange stars of different shapes. Each of these 5 stars extends a thin line and is connected to the night below. Death, skeleton. Conquer, armor. War, long sword. Famine, rice fork. Nightmare, bat. The location of the 5 nights, who is who, and where they are, can be seen clearly at a glance with their respective apocalypse stars. This world, in an instant, became a testing ground. After Connor said hello, he didn't strike with the second sword. The 5 knights all know that although this kind of greeting in the air can bring a little trouble to their respective forces, as long as the boss is still there, this trouble will not hurt their bones. The sneak attack on Yilin just now will not happen again. If it does again, it may really expose the true location of the station. Connor just faced the direction of the light beam from a distance, using the power of the tsunami to add fuel to the flames and cause shock. But this shows that conquering Night Connor's strength is truly unfathomable. After the initial shock, with Yilin's advance reminder, everyone in the station stabilized their bodies amid the violent tilt. The big apocalypse star fell on Yilin's head, and the president's reappearance was like the return of the backbone, giving everyone in the Apocalypse Guild a new shot in the arm. Old Emo. After Yilin landed, she looked at Emo Rendi in the crowd. Emo Rendi was still supported by Molly, and he looked a bit old. Molly looked at the long-haired Uncle G with a complicated expression, as if he wanted to cry but couldn't. Emo Rendi knew how desperate his granddaughter was now, so he didn't say much. He just rubbed Molly's head gently. Now was not the time to fall in love. Besides, Emo Rendi had not yet death. I have no intention of handing over my good granddaughter. Old friend, welcome back. Yilin nodded. After thinking for a moment, he gave instructions. This place is temporarily under the command of Emo Rendi. Be wary of sneak attacks by the Knights of the Apocalypse. In addition, the first wave of wild troops has been spawned around the station. Oda Dance. Wang Li Xiaoqi. Pang Li Er. The 4 of you will each lead a team of elites to clean up from the 4 directions of the station. You must clear a safe area of more than 100 miles. Pan Zhenji is at the base camp, and the others are responsible for watching Pan Zhenji's reaction. Once he says something strange, write it down immediately, making sure not to miss a word. Meng Meng, follow Lao Mo and don't run around in the station. Orders were issued quickly, and others had no time to ask what was going on. In the blink of an eye, the president had been away for a year. When he came back, he first wore ancient costumes, grew his hair long, and made a series of big noises like he was filming a movie. But in Tiankai Guild, those who can stay in the Snow Mountain Station are both confidants and elites. Even though they were full of doubts, after Yilin's order was issued, the recipients responded one by one. Oda Mai, be careful. Wang woof. Li Xiaoqi, okay, President. Li Erpang, come on, let's finish the work first. Wife, come with me. Yilin nodded. While checking the inventory in the storage space, he opened a portal again and came to Hating City. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1154. Eternal Night Falls. Hating City. When the flood hit, the public facilities built with great effort in the city were destroyed in a flash, steel bridges were twisted, viaducts collapsed, buildings tilted, and countless citizens were left adrift in the tsunami. If they were ordinary people, this wave would be able to wipe out most people, but living in Hating City, even if they are not combatants, they are still apostles who have been strengthened to a certain extent. After a brief period of panic and confusion, everyone began to swim towards higher ground, their desire for survival aroused. Li Kai and his wife didn't have time to digest the outrageous memory that GM was Yilin. He quickly came to the heights of the great engineer tower and regained control of the situation through the communication system. Report to the vice president, there is a, no, It's a group of sea monsters, a large group of sea monsters. They're landing. The second guard team is fighting the sea monster. The third armed helicopter unit is completely destroyed. Li Kai quickly ordered the members to carry out rescue as much as possible and asked everyone to withdraw into the defensive canopy as much as possible. In the face of disaster, only the defense of the station is the most powerful guarantee. Li Kai stood on the platform and looked far away. In the dark night, to the east of Hating City, there was a shadow like mountains. The dense eyeballs flashed with bloodthirsty red light, like a pack of hungry wolves, moving at a terrifying speed. Climb onto land. Their bodies are extremely large, and the largest shadow is hundreds of meters high, comparable to a scene from a monster movie. However, we are not filming a movie now, and there is no return of the king. Wherever the sea monster passes, it takes away real lives. Listening to the bad news coming from the guild channel, Li Kaiksen seemed to be bleeding. He took a deep breath, flew high into the sky, and prepared to take action. Wait, hubby. Mrs. Li pulled off Li Kai's suit pants and pulled her husband down. Wife. Li Kai held down the belt and looked at his wife expressionlessly. We are facing a crisis. Now is not the time to care about the long-lasting love of our children. What are you talking about? Mrs. Li spat softly. That person is here. Long hair, white clothes, holding a spear. A man who seemed to have walked out of the Xiangxia movie screen stepped out of the portal with a bright stream of light trailing behind him. Zhu Xian. Yilin held the immortal killing spear in her hand. After charging up with one hand, she threw it downwards. Call out. The light of the spear is like a shooting star cutting through the eternal night, and the dazzling rainbow is like a straight line, stinging the dark night. Boom boom boom. Wherever the spear passed, all the sea monsters stopped and screamed in pain. The violent explosion set off waves of more violent waves. The white of the waves, the black of the night, the red of the blood, and the shadow of the gun are like an abstract painting that no one can understand. After a moment, all the sea monsters turned into fragmented corpses floating on the sea. Li Kai didn't say a word the whole time, watching such a thrilling, yet natural scene. He rubbed his eyes and typed 3 sentences in one breath on the guild channel. Our president is back. Came back. Came back. After Yilin killed the sea monsters with one shot and relieved Hating City from danger, he floated to the top of the great engineer tower and silently recovered his spiritual energy. For Yilin, there are 2 main changes in regaining the qualification. First, he regained the identity of the registrant with ID 1010, but at the same time, he also lost the identity of the administrator. The 2 seem apparently incompatible. Of course, by this time, when Revelation was officially loaded, the administrator and the Goddess 11 could no longer operate in the dark as sneakily as before. Firstly, it was useless, and secondly, it was unnecessary. When Apocalypse comes, everyone in 11 Paradise actually forms a community of destiny. No matter what opportunities any of the individuals have or what gains they get, they cannot affect the overall situation. One is, of course, because the power of an individual has its limits, and the other is because, in the source database of Zyle Garden, the source stored in it cannot affect the overall situation. It is limited and cannot increase out of thin air. It will only continue to be consumed with the subsequent war. The props of the apostle, the skills of the apostle, the spiritual energy value required by the apostle to perform skills, or the ability props used to repair injuries. All these changes are actually based on the premise that the registrant is connected to the database. The transformation of source is completed. The A11 Paradise offensive stance was launched in advance, allowing the number of sources in the source database to reach 5 digits for the first time. However, the consumption of nearly 2 billion registrants, whether it is food or military supplies, according to Yillin's experience as an administrator over the years, these 5-digit sources can only be consumed for 3 years at most. Although 3 years sounds very long, compared with the history of the existence of 11 Paradise, these short 3 years are equivalent to the reflection of humanity before death. 10 hours later. Hating City has become a city on the sea, riddled with holes. Although Yilin personally took action and eliminated a large wave of sea monsters, different monsters would crawl out from the bottom of the sea from time to time and attack the city. The same scene, the same disaster, occurs in every corner of the world. Yilin was temporarily stationed in Hating City. After 10 hours of busy work among the elite members, Li Kai opened the door, looking tired, and reported the results to Yilin. This time, Li Kai didn't even bother to make black tea. There was a hint of worry between his eyebrows. He squinted his eyes and opened them slightly, and his eyes flashed. Guild President, in this attack, our guild lost a total of 982 third-level elites and above. In addition, I have issued an order to transport the still complete sea monster carcasses to the warehouse of the Great Engineer Tower for safekeeping. I have set the entire floor into a cold storage mode to ensure freshness at this point. Li opened his mouth with a slightly weirder expression. Forgive me for talking too much, could the president's move be food storage? After the tentacles are cut and refrigerated, they can indeed be regarded as squid tentacles, but they are a bit thick. Yilin pondered for a moment and did not answer Li Kai's question, but gave the next order. Go ahead and stay on standby with the highest level of alert for 72 hours. After 72 hours, all core members of the Apocalypse Guild will go to the Snow Mountain Station to hold a combat meeting. Li Kai was stunned for a moment, then stopped talking. Yilin smiled slightly. Brother Li, I know you have a lot of questions in your heart. I will answer them one by one during the meeting. When Li Kai heard this, he remembered Yilin's other identity and said with a wry smile, President, according to your seniority commensurate with Mr. Mo's peers, I'm afraid it's a bit inappropriate for you to call me Brother Li again. Okay, Xiao Li. Understood. Li Kai finally had an idea. In front of Yilin, he was willing to be a little plumb. That seniority is left alone. Yilin was as airy as the wind when she arrived, and then left. Li Kai sat in the empty conference room, rubbing his eyebrows. This series of changes happened so fast that he was exhausted. Really? After the first wave of attacks, the second and third waves of monsters descended even more rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the wilderness was filled with all kinds of ferocious monsters. The apostles had so much experience that they could vaguely recognize that these monsters seemed to have been encountered in usual trials. After exchanging information with each other, the apostles gradually mastered the skills of dealing with different monsters. Although there were countless casualties, 72 hours later, the survivors safely arrived at the stations and independent cities scattered on the land, forming a rudimentary line of defense was formed. At the beginning of the troubled times, everyone was unable to protect themselves. There was no leader, and no backbone. All the surviving apostles felt helpless. In the long night, they could not wait for dawn and could not see tomorrow. Yilin returned to the Snow Mountain Station. In the middle of the four zones of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the cave at the top of Mount Everest has been moved here for a long time. Yulin was familiar with the place and had regained control of it. He sat on the biting ice bed, and the familiar temperature made him feel a little warm. He lowered his head and sorted out the data and inventory of Becoming Apostle, ID, 1010, again. Apostle Panel. Yulin, ID, 1010. Title Shadow Warlock, Epic Level. Health 100%. Psychic Energy Value 6000/6000. Module Worry-Free Z1, Core. Permissions Administrator, Resigned. Sequence Beta D-003, Agent Night Nightmare. Bloodline Entropy Beast Subspecies Humanoid. Strength 20.0. Agility 20.0. Spirit 9.2. Will 10.0. Lucky -0.1. Charm 0.0. Skills Follow the Shadow, Max. Haunted by Disaster, Max. Bloodthirsty Disaster, Max. Summon the Mount Night Dire, 2 stars. Grasp of Annihilation, 4 stars. Shadow Kill, Max. Banish, Title, Skill. Enhancement Killing Technique, A level. Yin Yang Hands, B end level. Echo of Doom, S end level. Analytical Vision, SSS level. Mind Body, SSS level. Soul Cooking Technique, S. Cloud Body Wind Body Technique, S+. Free Technique, X. The Administrator and Yulin become one. Create a completely new panel. Over the years, Yulin learned the truth about everything. He wasn't too surprised by the changes to the panel. Permissions. Sequence. Module. Yulin sees the new additions and changes. Sequence should correspond to personality, also called personality. Xioxi's sequence is C-002. She is a god. As for the D sequence, it is second to God, which is reasonable. Yulin knew earlier that his original Apocalypse Night module, Damaged, was disguised as the core of 11 Paradise by Xiao 11 in order to exploit loopholes in the rules. It was also a foreshadowing laid in advance to take advantage of the fair agreement and create the fifth night. Actually, at this level, attribute values can no longer measure our strength. Yulin glanced at it and understood after a moment. Not to mention the nameless old black man Yulin was unfamiliar with, he, Connor, and Miriam, with just a few gestures, had long been able to display combat power that was far beyond what the attributes on the panel could show, and could not be measured by the panel. Bai Xiaoi, Master. Nai Hungziu, huh. Gaijiamimi, you. Master. While Yulin was contemplating, 3 little female spirits flew out of the spiritual hub, buzzing around Yulin like 3 little bees. The memories of these 3 mother spirits still linger on the moment Yulin died. With a change of vision, the administrator regained everything about Yulin. Before they could accept the tragic ending, Yulin came back to life. It's in the past. Yulin smiled and comforted the 3 crying little female spirits. Young madam. Bai Xiaoi's mouth twitched, and just when she was about to mention Xiaorugjiu, Clever Nai Hungziu and Gaijiamimi took action at the same time, pressing Bai Xiaoi to the floor, making her unable to move. You still said it? You still said it? You still said it, Gaijiamimi slapped Bai Xiaoi's mouth left and right. If you don't talk too much, it will itch, right? Nai Hungziu also looked at him and said, hush. 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 Yulin smiled and watched the 3 little female spirits with their own charms playing around not far away. This warm scene made him feel as if he had returned to the suspended fairy mountain, and he was a simple practitioner in the fairy mountain. Angry young man Lang Linyi. Master, what happened to you later? Nai Hungziu looked coldly and asked about what happened after Xiaorugjiu's death. One is to change the topic, and the other is to know what happened to Yilin after she died and why she came back to life in the blink of an eye. Yilin did not hide anything, smiled, and spoke plainly like a storyteller, simply recounting his experiences over the years. When she learned that Yilin had been alone in this world for 10 years, Gayajiamaimi, who was slapping Bai Xiaoi in the mouth, couldn't help it anymore, changed her body, silently put on her maid uniform, and rubbed the young master's shoulders. Knead your legs and be a quiet beautiful girl. This means 2 hours. It had been a long time since Yilin had tried to tell such a long story in one breath. After telling it in one breath, he felt clear, ethereal, and peaceful inside. The end. Yilin rubbed the 3 mother spirits' little heads respectively. Don't worry, it will get better. Dead skin is back. The accompanying prop distant utopia is also attached to the surface of the heart. Regarding the matter of utopia being lost and recovered, Yilin speculated that perhaps it was because when Xiaorugjiu turned into thousands of miles of snow, at the moment of determination as death, utopia had to find a new host to attach to. Then he found Yilin. Perhaps this is destiny. Distant utopia changed hands many times, and finally returned to his own body. In addition, other gadgets aside, what Yilin didn't expect was that in addition to the 3 life stones, the 6 legendary props left behind by the Empress of the Kiju, also known as Goddess 11, were all safe and quiet. Lying quietly in the storage space of Urin. Although Yilin's current status and legendary items are just the icing on the cake for him, who would think it's too much? Fragrant. The 6 legendary props are Human Emperor's Seal, Deviation Sword, Immortal Killing Spear, Organization Book, Noah's Ark number 9999 Prototype, and finally, Gaia Power Furnace. Gaia Power Furnace. Yilin closed her eyes and recalled the scene many years ago when Wang Xiaohu completely transformed into a mechanical life under the influence of this legendary prop. Gaia Power Furnace is obviously a comprehensive product on the technological side. On the surface, the Gaia Power Furnace is square and square, like a Rubik's Cube. In the middle of the Rubik's Cube, there is an annular groove filled with a ring. Yilin was stunned for a moment, then removed the ring with a click. He sighed, Kinkan twisted lock. This was the token of love between him and Xiaorugjiu back then. Father Lin forced this thing onto Xiaorugjiu's wrist. Xiaorugjiu wore it for 800 years, going around, and returned here. This family heirloom, named Kinkan Twist Lock by Lin's father, is actually the key to opening the box. The combination of the two is the real Gaia Power Furnace. After silently remembering for a moment, Yilin reinserted the key into the groove and checked the properties of the Gaia Power Furnace. Gaia Power Furnace. Level Legend. Durable, indestructible. Effect: it can turn any mechanical equipment into a new silicon-based life, plug and play, convenient and fast. And it can maximize the conversion of source output power. If used on a station, the station can be upgraded to a Gaia Fortress, which has the ability to evolve independently. Explanation: the people of Atlantis, who once gathered the crystallization of all science and technology, wanted to create an ideal perpetual motion machine that could provide unlimited power without relying on sources, but ultimately failed. Finally, the most completed Gaia Power Furnace became the power core of the dream city Atlantis. Silicon-based life. If Yilin remembered correctly, the fire source fragment he inserted into the night dyer had a similar explanation. By analogy, plus Wang Xiaohu's fate, Yilin quickly understood the use of this Gaia Power Furnace. But he had no intention of inserting the Gaia Power Furnace into the dyer. Instead of building an invincible mount, it would be more cost-effective to build an invincible fortress. Night Dyer, Miriam, Xiaowu, and Dog have all written, but he has written the least. It has almost become someone else's mount. After thinking about it, Yilin feels that there is no need to waste precious things. The legendary prop is in a mere Cybertronian gentleman's car. Yulin quickly made up her mind and put away the Gaia power furnace. After groping around in the storage space, Yulin took out the weaving book. The kind face of the flower girl flashed in her mind. After being slightly stunned, Yulin held the stone slab, closed her eyes, and deduced the principles of the world. This push lasted 3 days, nearly 72 hours. A pair of small hands covered Yulin's eyes. "Daddy, guess who I am?" Yulin secretly thought it was funny, pretending not to know, frowning, and Xiao 11. "That's not right." "Xiao Wu. And Xiao's hands are not that big." "Oh, it turns out to be Shue'er." "Dad guessed it right, Shue'er has a reward." Shue'er came close to Yulin's face and took a sip. "Mua." Yulin's blood bar was sucked away again. Shue'er was behind Yulin, hanging on Babo like an octopus. "Daddy, there is an ant waiting for you outside." Shue'er blinked. Shue'er's voice was loud. Outside the door, Molly's face turned dark when she heard this. "Call me sister," Yulin corrected Shue'er's poor language. In fact, how could he not know that Molly was waiting outside the cave wearing a small cotton-padded jacket? Not only Molly, Oda danced 100 meters away from the cave, holding the knife and sitting there for 72 hours, like a sculpture. Except for them, the guild members who had calmed down after several waves of monster attacks were all waiting silently. From various channels, they learned that inhumane disasters were befalling every corner of the world. Moreover, above the head of the Apocalypse Guild's headquarters, a scarlet and dazzling bat-shaped apocalypse star hangs high in the sky, just like a lantern of enlightenment. It is difficult not to care. Everyone is waiting. Wait for an explanation. Many people's panels have undergone corresponding changes. The loading of Revelation means one thing. This world has become a trial ground, a huge trial ground with the difficulty level of Twilight of the Gods. Outside the door, Molly had mixed feelings. The moment the balance of distortion and correction was broken, Molly recalled everything. When she was young, an Uncle G broke into her world and then disappeared without a trace. Until now, Uncle G is online again, but he is 2 generations older than her. This makes Molly feel stupid and her outlook on life is shattered at the same time. Core members, go to the conference room for a meeting. After being invisible for 72 hours, the president came back online and said something in the guild channel. The silent guild was boiling again, the teleportation room flashed with light, and Li Kai and others arrived here on time. "You come too, Meng Meng." When Yulin walked past Molly, he patted her on the shoulder without waiting for Molly to ask. A portal opened, and Yulin took Molly and appeared in the conference room of the Apocalypse Guild. Those sitting in the conference room were all core members of Tiankai Guild and Yulin's trusted confidants. Of course, now that the matter has come to this, Yulin has no intention of hiding anything. "Children, I think you must have many questions in your hearts." Everyone. Yulin, for example, who am I, what have I been doing these years, where have I been this year, what will the world be like, etc. Before answering your questions, Yulin took a photo. Clap your hands, let me introduce you to a Riddler first. At the conference table, Li Erpang, Li Kai, Li Chang'e, Ning Yu, Xiao Chuer, Su Jingjing, Oda Mai, Li Ziyuki, Suje, Suzayasu and others, and even Wang Er who pressed his butt against the door, all stood together. Stunned. "The Riddler? Bah, who is the Riddler?" "You are the Riddler. Your whole family is the Riddler." As soon as Yulin finished speaking, Xiao 11 hugged Xiao Wu Wu, cursed, pushed open a small pink door, and appeared in Yulin's room. Behind Rin. Ahem. Xiao 11 moistened her throat, looked at everyone, and showed an elegant and not embarrassing smile. "Hello, this is the first time for you to meet." When Wang Er saw it, he was so frightened that he quickly covered the dog's head with his front paws and clamped his tail. He remained motionless and silent, cleverly hiding himself deeply. Xiao 11 raised her chin, moistened her throat, and pondered for a while, then she raised her index finger vigorously, trying her best to look majestic, and said in a cute voice, "Tremble. Worship. I am your majesty." Oh my god. Maybe it's because Yi Lin called her a mere god too many times. Or maybe I'm lonely. Or empty. After 5,000 years, Xiao 11 appeared again in front of mortals. She felt a little excited. She held the left and right sides of the puppet Xiao Wu with both hands, and her eyes flickered in anticipation of everyone's shock and admiration. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1156. But after an awkward silence, Li Chang'e first coughed twice as if he was dying, rolled his eyes, and then showed a polite smile. "I didn't expect that after a year of not seeing each other, the boss has become more humorous." Oda Mai picked up the sword but had not yet unsheathed it. She suspected that this was another illegitimate daughter. Ning Yu tightened the bow tie around his neck and said with a smile, "Don't tell me if you see through it." Xiao Chuer shook her head vigorously, "I don't believe it." Ahem. Although Li Kai felt that the president would not joke at this time, he suddenly realized after thinking for a moment. He first looked at Xuer, who was clinging to his father, and then looked at Oda, who was silent. Wu and Molly, Li Kai instantly understood. "I think she should be the president's sister or something." Li Erpang did not inherit his father's worldliness. Instead, he was outspoken and outspoken. "What are you doing? Why did you bring back an illegitimate daughter?" Li Ziyuki murmured in a low voice, "Actually, we can also understand the president's mood. After all, it's been a year and everything is done. It's not surprising, but the president has to find a more reliable reason, right?" No one believed it. In fact, disbelief is a normal reaction. Taking advantage of Xuer's experience, they would rather believe that this is another illegitimate daughter for the president. If there is one, there are two, and if there are two, there are three. A father begets sons, and sons beget grandchildren. There are endless descendants. Men, that's normal. But what makes Li Erpang sad is, don't just stare at the wildflowers and pick them, just keep the grass around your nest and don't pick it. What a waste of natural resources. The god of cricket saw everyone's reaction. She was angry. Xiao 11 clenched her fist and exchanged a look with Yi Lin expressionlessly. "Can I beat them?" Yi Lin was puzzled and asked, "Now that it has begun, will you not violate the rules if you take action?" "Don't worry, it won't happen unless you kill him." "Sure," Yi Lin pointed at Li Erpang, "just him." Xiao 11 walked towards Li Erpang with a smile. Listening to the deliberately unconcealed conversation between Yi Lin and Xiao 11, the latter felt dangerous at first, but before he could ask a question, Xiao 11 reached out and gently touched Li Erpang's head. One shot. Snapped. The next weird scene made everyone's hair stand on end. After Xiao 11 slapped him down, Li Erpang's round head was turned into a pancake like soft dough. But Li Erpang's eyes, nose, and mouth were all squeezed together, crookedly, like the deep and shallow wrinkles on undercooked pancakes. "Suzayasu, fat boy. Li Kai, my son." The two people who had the closest relationship with Li Erpang were shocked and angry when they saw that the little fat man's head had been swatted flat. Yi Lin waved his hand with a smile. "Don't worry." He raised his palm and pressed it on the air, easily pushing the two of them back to their seats. Hoo hoo, hoo hoo. Li Erpang, who had his head flattened, was not dead. He hurriedly touched his pancake head and made a strange sound. He, you're just kidding." Xiao 11 stretched out her hands like kneading dough, and reshaped Li Erpang's head into a round shape. "Xiao 11, you scared them." Xiao Wujiao in Xiao 11's arms complained. Only then did everyone discover that the girl who claimed to be a god was holding a doll in her arms and could actually talk. Li Erpang sat back down and touched his restored firmness fat face in shock. He didn't care about complaining anymore, but looked at Xiao 11 in surprise. His mouth felt dry. She, is she really a god? Little fat man, why don't you believe it? The puppet Xiao floated in the air, its mouth opened and closed, and its hands on its waist. It's just a god, you, and you, it's not like you don't have any saw it. Xiao pointed at Ningyu, Xiao Chuer, and Li Erpang respectively. They were loyal teammates of Dog and the Brave back then. You, may I ask what your character is? Li Erpang, who was speaking unabashedly, almost said, who are you? But after learning from the past, Li Erpang immediately changed his mind after his desire to survive surged. Xiao Wu immediately changed his tone, imitating the tone he used when he played Susu, and said vividly, Excalibur, Susu. Come in obedience to the call. I ask you. Are you my master? Li Erpang was stunned. With a bang, his fat body smashed the stool under his buttocks and sat on the ground. After the farce of Pang Li's head first flattened and then rounded, all the core members present could believe it or not. They don't want to be rounded and squashed in front of everyone. What a shame. Look at that fat Li Er, nestled in the arms of the shrunken Suman, acting coquettishly and crying. Swish, swish, swish. Master Ma showed his professionalism and began to take out pen and paper to record faithfully. During this year, Master Ma's ability to collect intelligence made him the mainstay of Tiankai Guild. Li Kai knew this person's temper very well. Even if Master Ma was from Tiankai Guild, he would never prostitute Master Ma's information for free. There is only one trick to deal with Master Ma Li Kai, give money. Li Kai's approach firmly tied Master Ma to the chariot of Apocalypse Guild. Back to business. Xiaoxi and Xiao, I mean at the moment, there are two gods present. Unwilling to be left alone, Green silently raised his wings. Everyone couldn't help but gulped and swallowed. After experiencing the impact of the previous explosive information, even if there is another god standing on Yilin's shoulders, it seems that, it is not unacceptable. Yilin pressed down Green's pink little wings and shook her head gently. Frustrated Green, don't be arrogant. You are acting like a bird with a raised head at this time. Yilin started to speak, and everyone listened quietly. He started talking about it when he stepped into the door, omitting his experience with Xiaorugjiu, and talked about it in an understatement, and then said, I was killed by the monitor in that trial and entered hell. I think you all should have met the undead in the trial, and hell is the gathering place of the undead. In hell, I went through about thousands of missions. Well, it was a bit difficult, but I came back alive. But the time I came back was 10 years ago, before the 4 towers came. As a GM, I hid and made plans secretly. Finally, 3 days ago, I killed the supervisor and put everything back on track. Yilin's explanation omitted a lot of content, but the omitted version of the explanation alone contained a lot of information. The sudden amount of information caused everyone to fall into deep thought and digest it silently. So, Mr. Mo has always known that there are actually 2 presidents in the world. After silence, Li Kai figured it out and turned to ask Mo Rendi if the old god was there. Mo Rendi nodded, haha, he is my old friend. When Molly heard this, she drooped her head dejectedly and drew circles on the table in depression. Li Kai took a deep breath and said loudly, that's it? Many strange things in these years can be explained. Hell, my Oda, who had been sitting in the corner holding a long knife, suddenly stared at Yilin with calm eyes. I have seen you in my dream. Yilin explained with a smile, the other Oda Mai was on his deathbed, and the artifacts overlapped. There may have been a resonance between you. It is not surprising that you read part of the artifact's memory. Li Chang'e lowered his head in thought and murmured to himself, no wonder I always dream about some strange scenes about big guys, so much so that I went to see a psychiatrist. Anyway. Yulin spread his fingers and unfolded an illusion of a world map in front of everyone. To put it simply, our world has now become a trial ground. The difficulty is Twilight of the Gods, which is above the Evernight level difficulty. Hearing this, everyone's expressions darkened. But they didn't interrupt anymore and sat in their respective seats. Li Erpang, who had lost his seat, sat on Sister Sue's lap and listened quietly. What will happen next is also an unknown future for me. I tried to deduce it, but I couldn't deduce a clear result. But if we treat the current situation as a trial, Yulin picked it up. Picking at the dead skin on his forehead, he paused for a moment before continuing, it's nothing more than a mission. There must be a mission in a trial. Even in the Twilight of the Gods, which is in principle unsolvable, there must be a hidden mission. On the map, 5 marks appear on different continental plates. Skeleton, armor, longsword, rice fork, bat. Leaving aside bat, the other 4 are Death Knight, Conquest Knight, War Knight, and Famine Knight. Their individual combat power far exceeds that of every apostle. Find a way, it will definitely not go wrong to solve them. Yulin, who spoke strictly, used the word solve. But others didn't notice anything wrong with the word for the time being. Wait a minute, why don't we talk about bats first? Li Kai frowned. As the vice president, he began to speak and participate in the discussion. He pointed at the bat mark and asked the president in confusion. At this time, on Yulin's shoulders, Green crossed his waist and made a strange laugh. Yulin rolled her eyes at Green, who was looking for presents all day long. He looked at Li Kai with a calm expression. This is the gamble, no, the rules of the game. Every tower, equivalent to every district, will give birth to an apocalypse knight. The moment I killed the monitor, I obtained the knight sequence and became one of the knights. And I. Yulin pointed to the posing little bat on her shoulder. According to the apocalypse template, there should only be 4 knights of the apocalypse. But I did some tricks and made myself one of the knights of the apocalypse. I am the Nightmare Knight. Hiss. When everyone heard this, they all took a breath. What is this wave? If you want to defeat the final boss, do you have to become the boss first? Li Erpang sighed, awesome. Li Kai's eyes twitched, awesome. Li Chang'e, the boss is really awesome. Amo Rendi, as expected of you. Ning Yu, 666. Master Ma lowered his head and wrote quickly, this information is worth at least 100 million, it is really awesome. In the midst of the arrogance, Molly, who had a very smart mind and figured out the relationship between timeline and seniority in a short time, suddenly frowned. After holding it in for a long time, she finally couldn't help but ask. The question she most wants to know, wait, doesn't anyone find it strange? Who is the supervisor you are talking about? Click. Yulin's palm inadvertently made a clear palm print on the alloy conference table. After a moment of silence, Yulin replied calmly, the supervisor is Ling Yi. I killed her and returned here. Otherwise, this closed loop cannot be broken. How could you? Molly felt bad after hearing this. She and Ling Yi have always been sisters in the camp. Neither of them are apostles, so they seem to be incompatible with everyone else. They have a special time, almost like best friends. Now when she heard that Yulin said the fact of killing Ling Yi in such an understatement, Molly looked at Yulin with complicated eyes and didn't know what to say. How could you? From beginning to end, Yulin's tone, and expression were like stagnant water in a lake, so calm that it was chilling. He did not continue to answer Molly's question, but continued to talk about the key points. If I guessed correctly, there will be a wave of big purges and stations around the world. The geographical location of Hating City is very likely to be in a short period of time. I will be hit again, Xiao Li, I will have to work hard for you next time. Ning Yu, The engineering department that you and Fei are in charge of are trying to strengthen the outer defenses of the station and make the Hating City station an indestructible iron barrel as much as possible. Master Ma, now that all regional servers have been opened and the borders have disappeared, you are responsible for collecting information about the Apocalypse Knights from other regional servers. You can discuss the price with Xiao Li. In addition, special attention is paid to the conquest of America and Africa. Famine. When we were recruiting people before, we had already counted each person's abilities. Now, Li Chang'e and Su Jingjing, you are responsible for selecting people, selecting an elite team without moles, and forming a team of 5 people. Yilin issued orders one after another. Everyone accepted the order. After learning about the serious situation of the world, they all felt that they had a heavy responsibility on their shoulders. After the meeting, Yilin quietly took Shui away. The dog who had been squatting by the door finally breathed a sigh of relief and ran over to Xiao 11 and Xiao Wu, becoming a pure and successful licking dog. He, wow, long time no see. Xiao 11 lowered her head and rubbed Wang's soft white hair. Of course Green also ran away with Yiren. Her night. In the conference room, everyone was left looking at each other. They always feel that when the president comes back this time, his whole temperament becomes a little weird. Molly is still grieving over the tragic death of her best friend. Oda Mai lowered her head and recalled every detail of that dream. Now, I'm talking about you. Xiao 11 smiled and touched the dog's head, raised an index finger, and said quietly to everyone, although, it's normal that you don't understand him. In fact, none of you can blame him, he is the one who suffers the most. Molly was stunned. Xiao 11 waved to the others mysteriously, do you want to know his big secret? Hateful. How could it be possible? Of course I want to. Li Erpang was the first to raise his hand and agreed. This is God's proposal. In fact, they were all curious about what happened to Yilin in these years to turn into a man wearing ancient clothes, long hair, and a melancholy look on his brows. Xiao Wu raised his hand weakly, will he be angry? Xiao 11 asked back, then do you want to know who the child is? Xiao immediately replied firmly, a brave man has a generous heart and will not be angry, I want to see it. Xiao 11 chuckled and pressed her backhand randomly in front of her. Everyone's eyes were dazzled. When they came back to their senses, they found themselves in a cinema with a dreamy atmosphere. They were sitting in front of the screen, each of them had a bucket of popcorn in their hands for no apparent reason, and each of them had a pair of sunglasses on their face. The screen lit up. The movie opens. A lowly voice narration takes the lead and the opening scene is struck by lightning. In this world, there are monsters, Tao, demons, Buddhas, courts, wars, and disputes. The world is divided into 4 continents, namely Dongshen Shenzhou, Zini Yuhezhu, Beijuluzhu, and Nanzanbuzhu. Daqian Dynasty, southern part, Jinping Province, at the foot of Qingnu Mountain, Qingnu Village. There is a young man here. His name is Lin Yi. Inside the iceberg cave, Yilin was holding the legendary prophecy prop book of weaving. Invisible reasons intertwined in front of her, walking around Yilin like a spider web, and finally disappeared into the depths of the void not far away. From time to time, Yilin used his fingerboard to write down keywords, just like Gilgamesh 5,000 years ago. Sudden. Yilin raised his head and looked somewhere outside through the ice wall. After a moment of confusion appeared in his eyes, he shook his head helplessly, why do you always do unnecessary things? Xiao 11 and Xiao Wu appeared in the iceberg cave. Looking at Yilin sitting cross-legged on the ice bed, Xiao 11 showed a rare worried expression on her face, aren't they your little friends? Yes, so what? Your divinity has improved too quickly. You can't let them misunderstand you. Yilin lowered his head, neither happy nor sad, it doesn't matter. Besides, isn't the improvement of divinity a good thing? Not necessarily. Promotion in the sequence and achieving the status of a god is not as simple as you think. This is why I have never told you about it. Yulin smiled. Are you worried that once I change from a chess piece to a chess player, I will abandon this place? Zioxi kept her head silent and her speech was at a loss for a while. Yulin stood up, stepped forward and rubbed Xiao 11's head. It's just a god. Yulin found it a bit funny. Now that Xiao 11's strength has not yet recovered, she is so weak that she can be seen through at a glance. You know, I am a mistake. I was born out of thin air. I have no roots, no origin, and no destination. Green once told me that even the masters, who control countless world ships under their command, still have something that is difficult to let go of. The main world, I think, my main world is here. Xiao 11 shook his head. This is one of them. But what I am more worried about is that your divinity has risen and your humanity has not been destroyed. I am worried. Simple Yulin smiled slightly, and he mentally entered the hub. On the throne, there were two soul clones sitting respectively. One of them had complex happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy on his face, and the other's soul, the avatar, is as majestic as a god, with cold brows and intimidating eyes. These two soul clones represent humanity and divinity respectively. Divinity nodded towards Yulin and slowly closed his eyes. The light disappeared, like silence. When he opened his eyes again, Yulin's eyes were a little more humane. He smiled at Xiao 11 and said, "Look, this is enough." Yulin temporarily sealed the divinity. This big movie called 3 Lives, 3 Worlds, 1,000 miles of flying snow lasted 3 hours. The whole process is high energy and no peeing spots.